David Fogarty was a climate change correspondent for Reuters. Now, Reuters is a very respected journalistic resource. We've used it plenty of times for plenty of stories. Now, he wrote recently that Reuters managing editor Paul Ingrassia, who earlier served as a deputy editor-in-chief, he's now the top guy over at Reuters. He is an identified climate change skeptic. Okay, so obviously that can be that can lead to a lot of problems when it comes to journalistic integrity. Now Fogarty, he's formerly worked at Reuters. He alleged that with Ingrassia in charge, getting any climate change themed story published got a lot harder. Understandable, right? And he also claims that editors agonized over decisions and allowed articles to become mired in bureaucracy, and that amid a so-called climate of fear, Fogarty's role was ultimately abolished. Now, I mean, this is the claims of one person, except that it's backed up by another journalistic place called The Baron. Now, that's an independent website, and according to The Baron, which is a place for former and current Reuters journalists, Reuters has been steered into a new direction when it comes to climate change coverage. The report shows that there was a lot of in-print skepticism, decreased attention to climate change stories, and the reassignment of environmental correspondents to other beats. That's really strange. And also, the coverage of climate change news declined by 48% after this climate denier took over. Another interesting factoid here is that according to the Columbia Journalism Review, reporters at Reuters have said that they feel, quote, pressure from management to balance their climate change stories by including the views of global warming skeptics since Ingrassia was hired. So, it just amazes me how Reuters, according to this study, Reuters is becoming the CNN of print journalism.
This is why I don't appreciate false equivalency. The idea that two opposing points of view hold equal merit in an argument or a topic of conversation at any given point. There are some points of view that are worth being heard and have some merit to them, and there are some points of view that are ludicrous and need to be ignored and or exposed for the false information that it provides. It's to balance climate change science and facts out with so-called climate change skeptics is to promote and spread false information to people and give the illusion like they're two equal sides of the same argument and that there might be some legitimacy, to the opposing side.
What legitimacy does this opposing side have? They have absolutely no legitimacy. None. 97% of scientists say global climate change is happening.
Well, and this spreading of false information and creating the illusion like they're two sides of an argument that are equally valid is the reason why, even though 97% of climate scientists are in agreement that not only does climate change exist, and not only is it a serious problem, but it's also man-made, but there are only roughly 50% of Americans that actually believe in climate change. This is the reason why: the spreading of false information, the propagation of lies.
But to me, it's more important. It's to me if I consider myself a kind of a skeptic because I believe that climate change is bad, and I believe that there are problems that arise from it. But to me, I think the solutions that have been proposed are what you need to be skeptical towards, not the root science. And that's the big problem that I have, is this whole cap and trade thing and all that. So
but that's different. This guy literally does not believe that climate change is real or it has a problem.
Yeah, but then you're getting to me, you're getting into a whole other stage. You could have your view or whatever, but if you have certain people that are meant to report on certain issues in your paper, and because you don't like that, you're cutting them out, then you're gonna hurt the credibility of of Reuters in this case.
Yeah, but the credibility of Reuters is hurt when you have people that are peddling junk pseudoscience and climate skepticism.
But I'm saying, like, he has, like, all these people that were climate change reporters, right? Or environmental reporters is what they called them. And if he's, like, getting rid of them as soon as he takes over, and then their coverage on that issue disappears, like, it's going to hurt the credibility from from a reader standpoint. It hurts their credibility.
As it should. As it should.
But you also got to remember that climate change, despite probably everybody on this panel's objection, is not a interesting story to most Americans. Most Americans would rather hear about the royal baby or Kanye West's kid or whatever. So if he's putting more people into like celebrity journalism of Reuters and stuff like that, then it might be a good decision for the newspaper in general, because, or I know it's not a newspaper, but you get what I mean. It might be a good decision for them because they're trying to appeal to a dumber audience.
Okay, so but the whole issue, and I understand the business sense of that, but this guy is an identified climate denier, so he's doing this on purpose, and that he's not the only one. Now, Reuters is one of many of the news organizations that have failed, absolutely epically failed, in their coverage of climate change. Now, and this is interesting, according to Media Matters, the Sunday talk shows on ABC, CBS, NBC, and of course Fox News spent less than, on average, 8 minutes on climate change per show. Less than 8 minutes. 89% of which was driven by politics and none of it by scientific findings. Is that not sad?
What's funny is the only people who are covering climate change seem to be Fox News, because they're saying that it's a hoax.
Try and deny it.
Yeah, but that's because people. But the thing is, people don't want like a hoax is interesting. You know what I mean? So I understand why Fox is putting it on from that perspective, right? But from like MSNBC, CNN, if they're going to cover it not as a hoax, then people are going to be bored and they're not going to watch it because people don't like it.
I actually kind of disagree with you on that one. I think that people are afraid. They don't want to hear that bad news. They don't want to hear about how how this could eat up nearly our entire economy, even though you disagree with that study.
Well, that goes back to it being an inconvenience to people. They're afraid of it because it would be inconvenient for them to change their lifestyles, for them to consider, the gas they're putting in their car, how often they're, using their car. I walk everywhere. I live in a small town, but, you see people, get in their car and drive 2 blocks down. And that's not even the biggest contributor. You got people who don't want to stop using plastic bags when they go to the store. I've had arguments with people who say that requiring reusable bags would be too extreme, and we can't inconvenience people like that. We can't actually ask them to change their lives. We can't ask them to turn down the thermostat. We can't ask them to switch to another sustainable source of energy. We can't ask them to cut down on their meat consumption because the meat and factory farm industry accounts for between 30 and 50% at any given time.
You really have to follow the money, essentially.
Yeah, but you see, that's the thing. Is like all that, like, don't eat meat, like people are not like, when you break it all down, people are not gonna want to listen to that. Like, in all seriousness, like,
you are right. People don't want to
years
listen to it because
20 years from now, things are going to be a shit-smoking, disgusting, polluted, unlivable mess. And people are going to finally look around and be like, oh my God,
what happened?
Why didn't somebody do something about this? Why didn't somebody tell me that I shouldn't have been doing this and this and this? Well, they were. You just weren't paying attention. You weren't listening, and it was too inconvenient for you at the time. So you fucked your future self over, and you fucked your children over, and you fucked your grandchildren over because you were being selfish and irresponsible.
No, this is also a huge failure of the media as well, because who drives the conversation in this country? It's the media.
Absolutely.
And
That's what I meant. Like people aren't going to want to listen to that from their news. Is what the media companies are thinking,
either that or the media companies are thinking, we
or
get, we're
their
friends
General
with
Electric.
oil and gas. We're big corporations under this big corporate umbrella, and we're not gonna fuck over the people that, that buy commercials on our network. That's the whole thing that's wrong with corporate controlled news. Another thing that these Sunday shows like to do is that they quoted no Democratic politicians on climate change. The only politicians that were quoted, most of them were Republican candidates. And the rest, well, I should say half of the mentions on Sunday shows were Republicans criticizing people who actually want to take action on climate change. And so, and this is even more disturbing when it comes to our media. In 4 years, the Sunday shows have not quoted a single scientist on climate change. 54% of those people quoted were media figures, pundits. 31% were politicians, and not one of them was a scientist or a climate expert at all. They're saying, oh, you're a climate guy? You believe in climate change? You're not coming on our show. We don't want you here. But when they do have somebody on their show, it's a Republican who's saying, oh, yeah, that's junk.
But that's
Junk
that's.
science.
But there's a guy that Bill Maher keeps trying to promote. He wears the tie with the like the sun and the moon on it, and he's trying to promote him as America's new scientist. Because the thing
Neil
is we
deGrasse
don't.
Tyson.
There we go. Like the thing is despite Americans aren't people aren't logical. They want to hear news from somebody that they know, right? So you can't just bring on a random scientist or whatever. That's why the same pundits come on the same shows all the time, because people like to get to know people. So you got to promote somebody, and that takes a lot of media backing, and that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen when GE owns more than half of MSNBC, or a Saudi prince owns almost half of Fox News, because that's where they're getting most of their money, is from these people who are polluting, these giant corporations that control almost 90% of our media.
And GE is almost worse, because GE gets a lot of the cutout contracts from the green energy that don't really do anything. So they'll take the subsidies for green energy, but then they'll build, all their other crap that has nothing to do with green energy. So they end up paying no tax, and when's the last time you saw a GE solar panel hit the market?
Yeah, never.
All right,
okay,
throw it
so
over to me.
a couple more points. I know we're running massively over time because we talk too much. It is a talk show after all, right? A couple of points that I want to make is that the Sunday shows have also failed to inform their audience about the fact that 97% of climate scientists agree that climate change. They always present it as they present it as a false equivalence, and that only 11% of coverage applied that scientists agree on global warming, while 44% failed to correct a guest who questioned the science. So our media is an absolute failure, and it's because it's corporate controlled. We've got to get away from the old style of media. We've got to get away from it.
Right. And remember, there hasn't been any big action since the Copenhagen thing. So that also, to be fair to the media, and I don't want to be fair to them, that's a slight reason why coverage reduced, is because there's no push from the Democratic Party to do anything.
There's a lot of people that are actually calling on the media to start covering climate change again.